today, MHRA in time-honoured tradition, we always do a double act for Topper at Careers Fair, and I am going to cover off certain aspects of my particular role from a MHRA devices perspective. And I've got my colleague Andy McGuigan from
Afternoon.
HR. There he is in Human Resources to talk about some other aspects. So just a quick overview of Andy and my outcomes. So I'm going to touch on the first bit, a better understanding of the role of MHRA as a regulator and what we do, which is quite a lot. Andy's then going to cover a little bit picking up on what Vincent's just been talking about in terms of our commitment to growing our talent within the agency through different mechanisms and programs of learning for continuous development so that your career develops whilst you're in the agency. And then Andy then is going to cover off a little bit more about what roles the MHRA offers in the UK and the requirements and how you can apply for jobs within the MHRA through the civil service jobs portal with some top tips. And then hopefully we've got a little bit of time at the end for a Q&A session. So a quick overview, if you've not heard of the MHRA, the UK regulator, recently, I mean, we have been in the news quite a bit, number 10 briefings, etc. And it's been the same, I think, across the world with other regulators like TGA in Australia or the FDA in America. But in terms of the MHRA, we are part of the United Kingdom's Department of Health and Social Care. And we are civil servants. And as I said, Andy will pick up a bit more about what that means. But as you can see from that infographic, we in MHRA, we are one small part of the health and care system. There's quite a few partners across that system, but equally we are one of a number of regulators. As you know, there are plenty in Europe and beyond, and United States, etc. But we are also, as I said, also part of a global system of international partnership with the overarching mission to ensure that medicines, medical devices and blood components meet acceptable standards of safety, performance and efficacy. And it's MHRA, we believe, we still continue, even though we're out of Europe, we believe we continue to play a leading role in protecting public health. So what we mean by that is through effective regulation that we support businesses through research and development and that innovative devices come to market when safe to do so, but equally that we put patients first. So in terms of MHRA and, what is it we do? We are about delivering better outcomes for patients. And just a bit of a quick question, and I'm not sure if you can pick it up, Eric, in the chat, but there are 3 numbers there, and they are populations of countries across the globe. So it's just quick chat input. What countries do you think those populations represent?
Okay.
Anybody put something in the chat?
Somebody says UK.
Yeah, which one? The first one, second or third?
The first.
Yeah, correct. Okay, and second one is Europe, and the third one is North America. That's if I Googled those populations, correct. But what those figures are representing is the fact that as a regulator, MHRA, we're not just about protecting public health in the UK or delivering better outcomes for patients in the UK. We are also responsible for patient public safety across the world through our international partners. And I think, and there's a photo there of me. I don't know if you can see me on the right with the green top, but you probably recognize me from the fringe. It's not changed in a number of years. But that's me as a child growing up in Liverpool. And there are 4 generations of my family in that photograph. And in Regulatory Affairs, I think we all have a vested interest in medical devices and medicines and the safety of them. And I believe as a Regulatory Affairs specialist working in MHRA or in any industry in Regulatory Affairs, you have this personal interest in medical devices and medicines. So, for example, when I was 10 or 11, I needed glasses, I needed surgery. My nan needed a stent. My mum needed radiotherapy. So it's all about what you and I want is better outcomes for patients through regulation. no matter what that role we play in regulatory affairs. So why would you want to work for a regulator like MHRA? So these are some really good stories that have been in the news over the past few months in terms of the COVID-19 response by this particular agency. But what it's actually showing is that sometimes MHRA and regulators are considered or thought of as watchdogs, but actually we are enablers. We want to bring, when it's safe to do so, innovative medical devices and medicines to market in as quickly as time as possible through effective regulation. And as you can see through these infographics, I don't know if it's just gone and paused for some unknown reason, but we in the agency in our COVID-19 response, we stepped up, and you can see a lot of products brought to market in a safe and timely manner. So ventilators, CPAP machines, vaccines, of course, lateral flow tests to test for COVID-19, and protective medical devices like gloves and masks and surgical gowns. But one of the key things about working for a regulator, particularly when you have a public health threat like this, is about your ability to adapt and respond with innovative ways yourself to bring things to market when safe to do so. So we also look at things in terms of a pre-market as well as a post-market strategy and how we deliver those outcomes and better outcomes for patients, but it never compromising on safety. But behind all these great stories from a UK regulator, of course, there are many stories behind that from the researchers, from the designers, from those in regulatory affairs in industry, or the notified body or the approved bodies themselves. So don't underestimate the system-wide approach to regulation and bringing effective medical devices and medicines to market. But in terms of, from my perspective in MHRA, I'm a unit manager in devices, safety and surveillance, and essentially our focus is post-market in looking at things when things go wrong, like adverse events. But equally in my team, and it may be different across other regulators, but in MHRA, we operate in a matrix environment, in a cross-functional environment, which basically means when you come and work at the MHRA or you come and work with my team, is you're going to do a variable tasks in the pre and the post-market product life cycle of a medical device. So for example, no 2 weeks are the same essentially. So last week I may have been reviewing a clinical investigation, making sure it complies with the relevant requirements of the regulations. And it's really, really a proud moment when you see that device come to market several years later. Or for example, we're providing advice to manufacturers, or having an international partnership meeting with the Health Canada or FDA, my counterparts across the globe, in sharing intelligence and looking for signals when things go wrong across the globe, and taking steps to mitigate those risks. So we do quite a lot of different things within my particular unit. So it kind of like stretches you and excites you, and it does, test your skills in regulation, in technical knowledge, in clinical knowledge, and of course in regulatory knowledge. So before I hand over to Andy, my take-home messages, they come from a bit like Vincent actually, but come from 30 years in the medical device industry, just over 20 working at the MHRA, and I've developed my career from starting off at entry level and becoming a unit manager. But it's been, such a privilege to work with hardworking, committed, talented people across the agency and beyond. So, but whatever your choice in regulatory affairs, whether it be in a regulator like MHRA or in industry or whatever, there are 4 messages that I'd like you to take home with you today. Is always love what you do. It's what drives you. What gets me up in the morning after 20 years at the MHRA. Play to your strengths, develop those skills, those behaviors, that knowledge. And sometimes it's good to get out that comfort zone, because that's what's going to bring that development of you and that visibility of you in your career within a particular employer. Importantly is work with a successful team. you know, I don't work in isolation. The positive outputs or outcomes that I've achieved is only because of a multidisciplinary approach, because I work with a really great team. And finally, don't be defined by your job description. Do look for those new opportunities and challenges, because patients will be better off for it. So I'm going to hand over to Andy for the second part of the MHRA presentation. Andy.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so my name's Andy McGuigan. I'm the Resource and Skills Lead at the MHRA. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things today. First of all, about the development and offer at the organisation, and then some handy hints about applying some of the jobs we have on offer and some handy hints about applying for them. So, I mean, we're strongly committed. I work for the Learning and Development team at the MHRA, and we're strongly committed to individuals' development. So when you start, we have a 3-stage induction, a very comprehensive induction that deals with the sort of housekeeping issues, and then meeting your own team and your own division, and then meeting other people across the organisation and understanding the rest of the organisation, including meeting some of the senior people from across the organisation. And then we have probation, which really a lot of the probation is focused on your development at the start of the role. What do you need to know? What assistance and support do you need to be able to perform during your probation period? And then we have a lot of in-house training. On the whole, that's demand-led, so it's about what the organisation requires at any time. And my team are always finding that out, like meeting with the management, doing surveys to find out what the organisation requires, plus obviously strategically as well. Leadership, appraisals, values and behaviours, well-being, all of the things that are important at any given time. There's a really useful tool, civil service learning, which is available to all civil servants, and the topics are so widespread I could spend a half hour actually just listing all of those things. You know, it ranges from policy making, communication, personal effectiveness, remote leadership, cyber security, data analysis. And as well as that, there's new off-the-shelf learning available that gives you access to accreditations, qualifications in a different way than you used to be able to get access to them. There's also bespoke learning available on civil service learning for departments, for functions, for professions, coaching that assists civil servants with their personal development. So these are the basic offering to all staff. So at the MHRA as well, we do funded qualifications. We're obviously committed to research and development as well as regulation, so we encourage qualifications and external training courses. There's a whole host of training videos. I've actually just produced one, which was my first one, and I'm quite pleased with it. If anybody needs to see it, I'll send them it. So this is our basic offering to all new staff. In addition, there's a host of other offers available. We pay into the government's apprenticeship levy, and we have numerous existing staff who use that as a tool to develop themselves, whether it's in project management, leadership. We have numerous staff on the TOPRA Regulatory Affairs Apprenticeship, which has been a fantastic collaboration. We've even got people on trades apprenticeships, finance, HR, comms. There's a coaching network tailored to individual needs across the organisation. Anyone in the organisation can ask for coaching, and there's a coaching network that can provide that coaching. There's team development. Should your team require, as a group, some kind of interventions or learning events to help them develop? And we have a transformation academy, which is a virtual sort of learning resource similar to civil service learning, but only for MHRA staff. And there's bite-sized training resources, videos, guides, classes. The topics again are fairly wide-ranging, but you know, for people embarking on a career, there's career development tools, professional development, there's help with applying for jobs, project management tools, all of those kind of things. So, I mean, you want to think about where you come and work for us, how you might use these resources. And I'm going to talk about career development now and how these resources might be useful. So I think the key, and I think the previous speaker, Vincent, kind of touched on this as well. I think that the key to career development is understanding where you are and understanding where you get to. So there's obviously a kind of an element of self-evaluation. What attributes do you got? What skills and experience have you got? What do you need to know, and how are you going to get it? But it starts with the self-evaluation and reflection. Where are you now? So you're looking at what skills and experience do you need to perform in your current role. If you want to move across the organisation or across the civil service, what transferable skills have you got? What gaps do you need to fill in to enable you to move? How will you get that learning? Is a big question. If you want to move out of the MHRA, like what skills do you already have? What new skills, what experience do you need to build up to make that happen? Do you need a qualification? Going back to, we do qualifications, we encourage people to study for qualifications. Do you need to do that? So, I mean, outside of this session, really, we probably won't have time, but outside of this session, take a couple of minutes to think about these questions and how the previous information provided around resources might be useful to you. So that's development covered in a pretty much in a nutshell. So I'm just going to look quickly at a few of the kind of example jobs that we have at the MHRA that may be of interest to you. The regulation is kind of split into 4 different areas. There's licensing, which is obviously medicine being made available to the public. There's vigilance, which is the post medicines being made available to the public. There's the devices that Nicole works in, and that does both pre and post licensing vigilance. It does licensing and post licensing vigilance for medical devices, and then there's also the inspectors who inspect the whole process. So just looking at some of these jobs, medical device specialists, they process, assess and investigate adverse incidents from medical device users and manufacturers. Regulatory affairs specialists and devices support manufacturers to develop high quality clinical evidence across the life cycle of devices. Your pharmaceutical assessors who assess the quality aspects of initial and variation applications and provide market authorizations for medicinal products. Signal assessors do classification and follow-up adverse reports to ensure that drugs remain safe and deal with those adverse drug reports, analyse them, and if any subsequent action that might happen because of them. And then the inspectors kind of work alone or in pairs. It's a really very demanding job because the inspectors are inspecting pharmaceutical companies, both research and the manufacturing, also the distribution of pharmaceuticals, and also the retail, the final end point where the products are sold. So all of these things are constantly monitored by the MHRA, all of these areas, so research, development, manufacturing, distribution and retail are constantly monitored, and companies are held against a certain standard. Service requires applicants to be assessed via its success profile criteria. And these are a set of competencies used to create a person specification, and they describe the ideal candidate. They're kind of split into 5 headings, and under each of the headings, a set of criteria will be set out, and the recruitment process will be assessed against them. So the whole recruitment process is assessed against these criteria: the application, the shortlist, tests, and interviews. And the reason we do that, going back to, I think Vincent was saying that a lot of recruitment decisions now are kind of personality based. The civil services will recruit to personality, but weaved in with experience and technical knowledge so that we get a full picture. And what we try and do is get a whole range of sort of personalities, and we use the success profiles, the behaviours and the strengths to get teams that complement each other. So the behaviours, as you can imagine, is the action and activities that people do which result in effective job performance, and the strengths are the things that we regularly do well and motivate us. And I think that's about finding out really when we go through that in the recruitment process. It's about what makes you tick, what you're going to come to do, and really make a difference in our organisation. With experience and technical they kind of speak for themselves really. And the ability is about aptitude. It's about the potential to perform. So we do a lot of online assessments to say judgment tests, verbal reasoning, numerical reasoning, to see if you've got the potential to be able to perform. Certainly for people who might not have a lot of experience or a lot of technical knowledge. Finally, just going to again talking about applying for a role at the MHRA. Now, the way that the success profiles work is you have to address the success profiles in your application form. In most civil service departments, and certainly at the MHRA, we ask you to fill in responses to maybe 5 or 6 criteria, as well as a kind of a personal statement. And what I always say to people is, when you want to tell your story, and this goes back to the self-evaluation and reflection, you want to tell an organisation about your successes, about how you've contributed to wider successes, your great collaborations. You want to think about from the very start the things that you want to talk about at interview. I'm sure you're all aware of STAR examples, and what I always say is that if you start with the outcome and then describe how you got there, and the key to that is the actions. So what needed to be done is the tasks. It's the actions that bring your application to life. Details the key. Who was involved? Why were they involved? Why did you get them involved? How did you overcome hurdles? How did you deal with stakeholders? All of those things. The actions are the key to me. And you sort of edit that for the application process that we have in the MHRA, and then you come to the interview ready to talk about it. Now, I always recommend CVs, support statements, application documents, those kind of things, questions to application, answers to application questions, that you have, you're already thinking about the interview, and you're already thinking about the things that you really want to talk about, the things that describe you as a successful candidate. But edited in the application, but it's the beginning of a process. So that's pretty much all for me, and I hope that's been useful. I'll take some questions at the end once Nicole's wrapped up. So yeah, just we've spoke about the role of the MHRA as a regulator and its contribution to public health, which I'm sure most of you were aware of anyway, but I'm sure a whole host more of people are aware of it now than they were, say, this time last year, certainly. Talk about the continuous development and career pathways that we have, and that's really, really important, I think. And hopefully you have a better understanding of the kind of roles that we have and the specific way, and it is quite a specific way to apply for the civil service compared to other organisations. So thanks very much for that. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you very much, Nicole and Andrew. Very interesting again. So some people have asked questions already, and they have been answered in the chat. But I think there's certainly one question. When applying for a pharmaceutical assessor role at the MHRA, is a PhD or a PharmD more desirable?
Yeah, I mean, I think when applying for any role, unless there's a real sort of really specific kind of qualifications, I think there's probably positions that would be suitable for either of those qualifications, if you like. It's probably, when you've got to the point of PhD or a PharmD, it's probably about it's about your understanding of the wider pharmaceutical market at that point. Does that make sense?
Thank you. And does MHRA offer funding for its employees who want to do a TOPRA MSc?
Yeah, so we as Andy's explained, we do fund
Yeah, go on,
a
Nicole, yeah.
lot of courses and the qualifications if it meets the business needs and is also important to the role. So in a general answer to that is a yes, we do. But we've also got, I think, Eric, we've got now 12 apprentices in Regulatory Affairs that currently work in MHRA are also on that apprenticeship scheme. So we also support that, as Andy mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Yeah. So
I think the apprenticeship schemes are fantastic opportunity.
Excellent. So yeah, I think most of the questions have been answered in the chat. So if anybody else have any questions, please let us know now. And otherwise, if you have any other questions, please email myself or Nicole Andrew. The email address is on the screen. And thank you very much, both Nicole and Andrew, for a very excellent presentation. Of course, we look forward to seeing you in person in October, hopefully. But in the meantime, we have another short break and we'll see everybody back at 3:25 for a presentation by PRA. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Nicole and Andrew.